Relationships in the group keep things interesting. My D&D group has a fair amount of people in it, with more than one relationship. Some are fine, but one couple is going through trouble right now. Almost broken up a few times, etc. We started a session by leveling up our characters. Most of us forgot that we leveled up from the last session and were quickly adding our stats, rolling for HP, etc. A few players are veterans, and for others this is our first campaign. One of the players, a girl, was asking her so for help because she wasn't sure about what to do and didn't want to mess up. He's a vet. She was looking it up on her own, and he just started berating her about how she was wasting his time, and why would he help if she was just going to F% look it up and generally just being pretty vicious / yelling at her in front of the whole group. From an outside view it was super unwarranted. Keep in mind this was before the session even started. She tears up and leaves at one point. She played it off like she was just going to the bathroom, but she was tearing up and she was sniffling. When she came back, she very quietly asked someone else for help, and the whole group was quiet while they did her sheet. Everyone just glanced between her and the guy cause it was so awkward. For the whole session you could just tell she wasn't really in the right mental space for D&D after what happened. Just yikes. Relationships out of game complicate things for sure. I hope things get better for them. But geez. Redshirt PCs and the DMPC bridge crew. This is a story about that guy and when he became GM for the most open-ended and somehow railroaded campaign I've ever been a part of. A bit of backstory first. That guy, who will be referred to as Steve, was at one point a close friend and rumored. That is no longer the case due to a myriad of reasons that do not pertain to tabletop gaming. Steve has been a part of a few of my campaigns, none of which seemed to get very far because no one seemed to be having fun. Perhaps I was wrong to assume this, as the only feedback I ever received was from Steve at home telling me how he felt he didn't get enough time in game to develop his character. He would always play these interesting eccentric types. A witch that eats children. A boy genius obsessed with World War II. A goblin that despised goblins. But he was never a team player. He always attempted to steal the spotlight and drag it over to a solo adventure his character was attempting. So, finally after our second campaign with him as a player comes to a suitable conclusion, he offers to run a GURPS 4E space campaign. Everyone at the table has some reservations about GURPS, but we give it a shot. We figure that if he's in charge of the world then he'll highlight our adventures. At first it's going great. We put together a crew of a biologist, a doctor, a bounty hunter, an overly curious robot, and a patriotic captain. We had some fun exploring the galaxy, finding an aquatic world, and using the robot holding a disco ball as a fishing lure while the eggheads did their science stuff. The overall story was compelling as well. A big bad race of alien bugs attacked Earth in the early 2000s and now we are homing in on their home planet for some good old-fashioned Earth justice. The DM is taking our interests in consideration and constantly asking what our characters would like to do. After a while this wore thin as all character motivations dwindled to nothing. Eventually, we run into a secret government spaceship construction plant that's staffed by space gnomes from the far reaches of our galaxy. As we leave the station, we gain a stowaway named Christoph who is by far the smartest of his people and can slap incredible machines together from almost nothing. From that point forward half the descriptions of the goings on aboard the ship are how Christoph leaves half-eaten sandwiches everywhere, what wacky invention Christoph just happened to build, or what he's torn apart to build his inventions. Furthermore, almost all problems are only solvable by Christoph's magical devices. How do you stop a star from collapsing? So that's one DMPC we have essentially running the show. We voice this irritation to Steve, and he insists we don't have to ask Christoph for help. Next mission introduces an NPC frozen in stasis. Upon rescue we discover she can see the future, proceeds to warn us every time we do something risky that we could die or put the ship at risk, and sort of takes all the goosewalk and decision making out of the adventure. But 2 railroad NPCs aren't enough. There are 4 humans who are the best pilots in the galaxy, named after famous rock stars, a common trope for Steve's characters. Not only are they better than our captain at everything, but when the battle against the big bad bugs comes around, they're the team that has the special mission to attack the bugs' Hive mind core. Something I figured the PCs would at least have a hand in. But no, we sat in our ship and kept a handful of fighter ships busy. So after being completely discouraged by our lack of influence in the story, we discover that an NPC we worked for is a bad guy who controls people's minds. I'm not talking one or two people. He apparently has a global mind control network and is running hundreds of world leaders simultaneously with the intent of keeping humanity in line. He turned an NPC we all kind of marginally liked into a Stepford wife and is generally a self-serving prick, which was all the motivation we needed to attempt to assassinate him. It goes about as well as you'd expect. He sensed us coming. He had all manner of telekinetic defenses. Frankly, we never stood a chance. The campaign ended with most of us going to jail or dead. Steve later told me that evil psionic tyrant was one of his favorite NPCs and that he wanted us to be friends with him. How my party backquote ruined a player's terrible character. I'll try to keep this short. How a shitty character was ruined by the party. By not letting him be shit a short tale. A bunch of friends and I decided to finally kick off a campaign after a while of discussing it. Luckily one of them had played for a while and put his hand up to DM. He's great. 10/10. Have never had an issue. There was 4 of us. Myself, 2 brothers, and their roommate who I didn't know before this. Nice guy, a bit odd. We had a few people come in and out for a while, but this was a core group. We'd been playing for a few months and everyone had just gotten into the dynamic and everyone's roles were set. Paladin, sorcerer, tiefling, and a dragonborn. Ours character. Things are going great. Until one week, when R decided he's sick of playing this war-torn dragonborn captain and had something else in mind. This ended up being a homebrew maybe. Engineer high elf with a pretty cool fire-based Iron Man-like suit. Problem was, this guy was a deranged pyromaniac who loved fire, like a bit too much. So we pick him up, since we sort of have to, and continue on our adventure. This is where shit starts to get old really quickly. We are traveling through this dead forest that apparently hasn't seen rain in decades. All R wants to do is set fire to the whole place, and he won't shut up about it. Every pause in the RP he's setting a tree on fire, wandering away from the group, basically slowing us to a halt so he can run off and try and kill the group. An hour of this, and we're all basically sick of his shit, so the DM stops us for our long rest after some heated discussions that only brought the response, he's a pyromaniac. He spent the long rest staring into the fire not saying anything, and I try to set another tree on fire, all of which the DM didn't allow. Thank God. So the session ends, and before the next weekend we get a message saying that he wasn't able to keep playing, even though we play at his house, and he spends the whole time held up in his room. Needless to say, the party is having a much better time without him.